Welcome to the Sooners 360 Recruiting Podcast, a podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners 360. Each week we catch you up on the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluations on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruiting analyst for Sooners 360. This podcast is sponsored by Sooners 360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360817 and click subscribe. It's only $2 a month. There's also a free trial option, and that's where you'll find all of my recruiting content in written form. The link is also in the show notes. Also, this podcast is now part of the Believe podcast family. Every team, every topic, everywhere. I'm also appearing on the Horns Down podcast YouTube channel discussing OU season, along with Chris with a K from Horns Down and Jason Watkins of the Hall of Fame podcast. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel to be aware of when those live streams occur. You can just search for it in YouTube by going Sooners 360 and clicking subscribe. This is episode 124. The portal ends and Valai offer binge. So let's start with the recruiting news, or in this case, the end of the portal. So OU has made two new additions since the last time I recorded. We'll start with the wide receiver, and then we'll move to the kicker. So Jermichael Carter, wide receiver from McNeese, chose OU this week. He's 6'4", 190 pounds. OU has been targeting a big wide receiver from the spring portal ever since the injury to Giovanni Gibson. And the apparent and the ongoing, well, this ongoing is not really fair. And also, OU is waiting to see the status of the rehab of Jaden Gibson, who decided not to enter the portal. So OU is tracking a number of wide receivers during spring, but the cash being thrown around at wide receiver is considerable. So that curtailed OU's pursuit of a number of targets. Most notably, Xavier Lloyd from Illinois State was probably the guy OU was going to go the deepest with, but his price tag just sort of skyrocketed. Carter had good, not great stats last year at McNeese in a predominantly running offense. Based on the footage, he looks like a good big wide receiver. His quarterback seemed to weren't really getting him the ball in the most opportune moments, but it's just not a high-flying offense that they're running. I like to view this as kind of an insurance move based upon the injuries in spring. And OU obviously has in the back of their mind the unreal wide receiver injury issues from last year. So they've taken one last opportunity to provide a big receiver complement to probably the starting two wide receivers in the group of Satania and Dion Burks. So they got a big wide receiver to complement those guys. I thought he had 2 years to play. He actually has 3 years to play. So for some reason, all of the big wide receivers on campus kind of click and hit. Carter has some time to develop. He can be a factor in 2026, possibly, depending upon what happens. So it's a good developmental move for OU. And again, and for those panicked about the wide receiver position, Carter will come in June and has some time to get used to John Mateer. So I think it's a good addition. And probably with the money OU spent elsewhere, predominantly Jaden Ott, maybe Makula from Stanford, this is probably the best player OU could acquire within their budgetary concerns. Because also they did spend money last year on Satania and Giovanni Gibson and Keontez Lewis. So I think this is a good move. Emmett Jones seems to be the big wide receiver whisperer, not counting whatever was going on last year, but prior to that. So there's a lot of talent that could be unlocked here by Emmett Jones. So OU also got kicker Tate Sandell from UTSA. Based upon all the slightly negative feedback coming out of the Crimson Combine about the kickers, I'm not sure you can underrate this move. This is a massive move, getting a kicking upgrade on campus, bigger kicking competition. You can't discount having an effective kicker and what that could mean for OU's offense. Not going for it necessarily on fourth downs as much, banking points with an effective offense and an effective defense. A kicker could be a huge weapon. In 2024, Sandell was 17 of 18 inside 50 yards. He also was 2 of 5 beyond 50, but he did hit a 54-yarder last year. He has 2 years to play for OU, allowing freshman kicker Liam Evans some time to get stronger and work on his kicking. I'll be shocked if Sandell isn't the starting kicker for OU this fall. OU, based upon the sources I've talked to, felt like Sandell was in the same class of kicker as UT portal kicker Mason Shipley, who OU also tried to recruit. Once Sandell was in the portal, OU moved to quickly get him on campus and get him signed, and kind of ignore and obviously, and based upon the speed they moved, they felt like he was a better kicker than the Baylor kicker and the Coastal Carolina kickers, who at the time were both still in the portal, and OU was rumored to be figuring out if they should bring them on campus. Sandell also has excellent stats in touchbacks, which is kind of a hidden yardage stat. At any time, you can just get touchback after touchback, avoid injuries in the return game, and also just stop the big play from happening. Last year, that big return by LSU really flipped that game around. So Sandell has a chance to just, hit touchback after touchback, neutralize the opponent's return game, and put the OU defense on the field at the 25-yard line. I'm not sure there's a downside to him doing that. Is there anything left in the portal? Well, let's just talk about a little bit about what the other positions that had somewhat been discussed. So cornerback, no news. No one OU didn't bring anybody in for a visit. They didn't feel like there was a cornerback worth what the price was. And if they couldn't find a veteran cornerback, then there was really no point. OU's got young cornerbacks, talented young cornerbacks. And I think the second half of spring even raised those thoughts higher in the coaches' minds. We have good, young, athletic, potential star cornerbacks. They just need a little seasoning. And if we can't, I think the best guys probably in the portal were some guys that were younger, had some, had more eligibility, but weren't going to bring a veteran presence that OU really needed. So linebacker, no linebackers were brought in. I didn't think this made much sense with Kobe McKenzie and Kip Lewis and Sam Omosigo having good springs. Any linebacker, and Kendall Daniels, depending upon how they use them and where they use them. And also James Nesta and Taylor Heim. And Ethan Heineke has also been mentioned of having a good spring. I just didn't see where a linebacker fit. Next year, depending upon who leaves, that could be a completely different story. But this year, I just didn't make any sense. At quarterback, OU has lost Cole Gonzalez. He was only on campus for a couple of months. I think he thought he could be the backup to Mateer and then maybe take over if Mateer left after 1 year. Michael Hawkins has had a great spring based upon all reports. So I think Gonzalez viewed the backup position is probably going to Michael Hawkins. I want to get on the field and play. He transferred to Pittsburgh, and I think he probably has a chance to hit the field there. So all the best to Cole Gonzalez. It does leave OU down a quarterback and only has 3 quarterbacks right now: Mateer, Hawkins, and Jet New. There's a lot of quarterbacks in the portal of varying degrees of experience and probably talent level. Will OU try and bring somebody in? They're not going to really probably pay him a lot, but just bring somebody in to be a 4th quarterback. I think that's a strong possibility. This is not an area where there's a shortage of players. There's lots of guys who are looking to do something different at quarterback. So we'll see what happens there. In terms of a spring transfer grade, We just, NFL draft just happened. Everyone's getting draft grades. So what would I give the transfer, the first portal session transfer grade under Jim Nagy? I'll give it a quality grade of B+ and a quantity grade of B+. So the quality score. Ott's a starter at running back and may be arguably the best prospect player in the spring portal. McCullough could be a starter at center. He's going to push Troy Everett, and OU feels like he has NFL starting potential. Sandell is going to be your starter at kicker and looks like an upgrade at the kicking position. And it looks like if he keeps kicking as well as he is inside the 50, could be a real weapon for the Sooners this fall. But either way, he's a starter. And he's an upgrade. That's a big impact. Quantity score, OU addressed the biggest roster gap, I feel like, on the offensive side of the ball. At offensive center, they didn't really have a center they trusted. McCullough gives them depth at center, experience depth, and we know last year that center injuries can cripple an offense. So OU has done their best to ameliorate that situation. OU added injury insurance, protection at wide receiver after the Gibson injury with Carter. OU also added depth at nose guard for this fall and beyond with Ricky Lolohea. He's another big body. He has some potential. There's definitely some potential for Todd Bates to turn this guy into an effective rotation nose guard for OU. And OU doesn't have as much nose guard depth as they have 3-tech depth. At 3-tech, you've got Trent Wilson and Nigel Smith in the fold behind David Stone and Grayson Holton. So adding Lolohea into the mix behind Jaden Jackson and Marcus Strong, I think, probably will end up playing nose guard. But next fall, OU's got 3 nose guards already. So that kind of protection against depth and injuries and the ability to just rotate players in is huge. So obviously, who got away? And it's Lance Mason, the tight end from Missouri State, who went to Wisconsin. Mason would likely have upgraded what most feel like is the weakest position group in Norman. Although I will say the buzz on Carson Kent has been pretty positive second half of spring. If you listen to the Teddy Lehman podcast, they said they talked to Carson, and Carson is bigger than they thought. They said he's 6'5", 250, which is, he was, rumored to be about 6'4", 240, 235. So if he's bigger, if he's that size and he can work on stuff in the summer, OU may have lucked out into a tight end weapon. We'll see how that goes. It's hard to project how big a loss Mason is with not knowing how the tight end room will shake out. But it's again, it just continues the struggles at tight end, both high school recruiting and portal recruiting, which is just frustrating the crap out of OU fans. I don't think there's any chance of OU picking up another tight end in the portal. If you look at the different portal ranking sites, Sooner Scoop mentioned this on their pod. Devon Mitchell's the highest rated tight end. I think that tells you what the pool of players left are. There was an Auburn guy that was kind of interesting, but OU obviously can't recruit him based upon the non-intra SEC transfer rules. So that's 14 minutes, and I think I've wrapped up the big bundle that is the portal. That's the updates I have for that right now. So let's move to what is usually the traditional part of this show. Let's talk about high school recruiting. So there's several trends I need to kind of relay to you guys that I'm hearing about OU's recruiting efforts in general. The first one is, don't be surprised if OU moves off long-term targets as Nagy and the staff watch film and reevaluate OU's target board in consultation with Brent's staff. Those two staffs are going to have to come together, start reviewing film, start exchanging ideas, and figure out who they really want to target for the target. So don't be surprised if Nagy and his team has some different opinions on some guys, and that leads to some productive discussions about who OU needs to be recruiting. The wait for verbal commitment. I think you got to wait another 2 weeks for Ryan Gilbert, the cornerback from Forney, to commit. That should go OU's way. But I think after that, you're going to have to wait for the official visits in June to occur. And everybody else is going to be having official visits in May. So there's a chance OU targets will fall off the board just because, everybody else is going to be using Brent's never used the May weekends, this weekend, next weekend. I think Memorial Day and travel and some other things are kind of Brent's thinking there. Don't necessarily disagree with that. But it does mean OU's going to be a little bit on the sidelines in May while everybody else is having official visits and pushing for OU's targets. Also expect, and we're starting to see this, some new offers going out at key positions like linebacker. Also expect, based upon some film review, for OU to go back to some previous targets and focus their energies there, re-engaging, making a bigger push. One other trend, we'll see how this plays out, but based upon what I'm kind of tracking, I don't think OU is going to hit their usual 20 number of verbal commitments by the first game they play. Let's just call that date 9-1. I think OU may bet on their season and an improvement on the field to kind of counter all of the negative recruiting, and may bet on their season and try and flip some of their internally higher rated targets and try and push for official visits in the fall for some games. OU's got a good home schedule. There's some windows definitely in October. There's an early window in September for Michigan. And there's definitely some windows in November and October for some home games for OU to bring in some targets if they're playing really good ball. I think they might hold back 5 to 6 spots to kind of try and push for some priority targets. We'll see what kind of happens there. I'm also hearing Nagy wants to see more senior or some senior film before investing in some prospects. Based upon that senior film, I could see OU jumping back into contention, provided things are going well on the field. So I could see OU sweetening their NIL deals for some guys as Nagy reevaluates their impact and their overall worth as a prospect, which is what we're going to, their NIL slot. So keep an eye on that as well. And lastly, I hear that Nagy will pay for elite difference makers impact positions. OU has the money to compete for elite guys if they want to. And if you've been following Nagy and following some of the NFL stuff and the other traffic, Nagy obviously thinks tackles are difference makers. Quarterbacks and wide receivers are difference makers, cornerbacks. So you could see some action there with some prospects where OU is fighting at a higher dollar number than you might anticipate. All right, that's some trend stuff to watch. So here's some just general recruiting news and notes. The first one, Jaden O'Neal had a throwing session in front of a number of college coaches in Mustang, including Ben Arbuckle, UGA's offensive coordinator, Mike Bobo, FSU's offensive coordinator, who I've not bothered to look up his name. Actually, is it Gus Malzahn? Is Gus Malzahn still their offensive coordinator? I doubt that was inspiring for O'Neal, but who knows? And then Seth Doege, Arizona's offensive coordinator. I had a quick exchange with his dad. He felt like Jaden had a great day throwing the ball and demonstrated some improvement, demonstrated that he was working on some mobility drills during the session, throwing on the move, which have been some of the issues with Jaden coming out of some of the Elite 11 and some other stuff had been his ability to throw on the run. So I think they've been working very hard on that, and they felt like, Jaden had a good day. UGA is probably getting Jared Curtis in a couple of days. I'm recording this late May 1st, be published Friday, May 2nd. I think May 3rd, Curtis is announcing. probably will choose UGA, taking them out of the running. But watch out for Arizona. They have connections to Jaden's just from a West Coast perspective. And Jaden's agent is Ortez Jenkins, who is advisor. That probably would, Ortez Jenkins' name's I just call him OJ. I've interacted with him a couple of times. Great guy, but he is connected to the Arizona program. That's where he played ball. So there might be something there if OU continues to go down this 2-quarterback path without some resolution before the official visits in June. I'm stunned it's taking this long, but there does not seem to be any sign of a resolution. Coach Bates was in Virginia visiting Valdon Sone, the extremely talented nose guard defensive tackle from Virginia via NFL Europe. He's ranked in the top 100 by at least one service. OU's probably battling Florida, Bama, and other places. I'd be surprised if OU didn't get an official visit, and if OU's official visit didn't make this recruiting pretty interesting, with Sone having OU in his final group all the way to the end. Coach Hall's bouncing around all over the place, as per usual, with safety prospects around the country. But he was in Utah visiting safety Selassie Moa, who's 6'1", 180, speed, and more speed. Selassie is, I presume I'm pronouncing something close to right. So Moa is top 50, top 35 player in the country. OU battling USC, LSU. OU should get an official visit and be somewhere in this race. If OU signs a third safety, it would be Moa. He's got that kind of elite deep coverage potential, match up against wide receivers with his speed and athleticism. He's going to be an interesting recruiting to track, depending upon where OU goes with some other positions. They've made 2 new offers for 2026. The first one is Ashton Blatt. He is 6'4", 230, defensive end, outside linebacker from Pennsylvania. He's a 3-star composite. It's an interesting offer. Everybody's been saying this is like a pass rush backup. I just don't see that when I watch his film. He's not playing defensive end in a 3 or a 4-man front. He's more playing kind of a 3-4 outside linebacker, what's currently being kind of referenced as an overhang defender. He's spread out wide. He's dropping into coverage. He's much more of what I would call a traditional Sam linebacker type player. And I actually wonder if OU's thinking of moving him inside to Mike and transitioning to that. He's extremely physical. He looks explosive, and he's comfortable in coverage, and he's comfortable being on the outside. So maybe he's a big cheetah, or you do a 3-3-5 look with him sometime. I'm just not sure. His film doesn't look like Cruel's or KJ Ford's film. Those guys are either stand up, attacking the quarterback every play in their highlights, or hand in the ground doing the same thing. That's not what I see in Blatt's highlights. They've also offered a linebacker from Wisconsin called Ben Wenzel. He's a 6'3", or maybe almost 6'4", about 220 pounds. He's a low 3-star on Rivals. That's the only network that has a ranking for him. Wenzel looks like a typical Wisconsin Badger linebacker from the days of when they've had T.J. Watt and guys like that at linebacker. Chanel, who was also a linebacker drafted by the NFL. He's a Mike linebacker all the way. He's physical, high motor, good tackler. He looks pretty good in coverage. He has a frame where he probably could be 6'4", 240 easily. How does he fit into the speed, the sideline to sideline speed OU would need in the SEC with just so much team speed at wide receiver and so many wide receivers being put in the game? I don't know. It's an interesting offer. I'm not sure where it goes. I'd be surprised Luke Fickell lets him get out of Wisconsin, because he looks like he would dominate in Big Ten play at either Iowa or Wisconsin. That's kind of what he looks like. The Iowa quarterback who got drafted a couple of years ago, Jack Campbell, that's probably a ceiling type for him. So those are the two new 2026 offers. Now we're going to get to 2027 and the Jay Valai cornerback binge. So I'm about to throw a bunch of names at you, so just bear with me, and I'll just list them all just so you have an idea of what's going on. So one of the non-cornerback offers, OU just offered David Jacobs, who's a 6'5", 230-pound defensive end from Atlanta. He's a 5-star all-everything player. Actually, he's in Roswell, which isn't technically Atlanta, but I'm Atlanta Sooner, so I don't live in Roswell. I live in Atlanta, but this is basically Frisco compared to Dallas for a comparison, something like that. Maybe not quite that far. Maybe more like Louisville or something like that, if I have my Dallas geography even halfway right. He's ranked as the number 3 player in the nation by 247. Everybody in the free world wants him. I have no idea if OU has a hook, Todd Bates has a hook here, or anything like that. Then they offered Duvet Williams. He's 6'2", 170 pounds. He's a cornerback from California. That's about to be a theme, guys. He plays that traditional powerhouse, Junipero Serra. He's a 5-star. He's ranked the number 3 player in the nation by Rivals. So that's 2 number 3 players in a row. Everyone has him as a 5-star, and everybody in the free world wants him. Then we have another California cornerback, Juju Johnson, 5'11", 175 pounds. He's at Long Beach Poly, which used to be a powerhouse and hasn't been mentioned in powerhouse as a powerhouse recently, but in the early 2000s, they were just putting player after player into USC and other places. He's number 23 in the nation, and he's a 5-star. Then we have, to break up the California cornerbacks, we have a cornerback safety from Bishop Gorman in Vegas. Hayden Stepp, he's 6'3", 190 pounds, could be a cornerback, could be a safety. He's ranked as the number 28 player in the nation by 247. I'd like to think DMM can open some doors at Gorman for OU. Hasn't been happening lately, but we'll see. Then OU offered Keyshawn Bowman, a cornerback from Tennessee, 6'1", 170 pounds, ranked top 50 in the nation by 247. Back to California, we have another cornerback offer, Danny Lang, 6'1", 170 pounds, cornerback at Mater Dei. We're pretty much hitting all of the California powerhouses here. He's ranked in the top 150 by several services. Then another California cornerback, Evan Mack, 6'3", 165 pounds, top 150 on 247. And then we have let me just double check this. We have our final cornerback of the offer stretch, Dante Wright, 6'2", 175 pounds from Long Beach Poly in California again. And he's ranked in the top 100 by 247. So basically, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of the top cornerbacks in the nation, Jay Valai just offered this week. Actually, in the space of about 2 days. Other offers of note, Bill Biedenbaugh offered Luarenze Samu from Grand Prairie in the Dallas area. He's 6'5", 350. He's an offensive guard. His family's originally from Tonga. He's unranked. There's very little film. But I can pretty much guarantee if Bill's offering a 350-pound offensive guard whose parents are that's got Tonga heritage, this kid's a player. That's all I'm going to say. Uh, then OU made a tight end offer to Luke Brewer, 6'5", 220 from Iowa. He's a 4-star. He's ranked in the top 100 by Rivals. I'd love to believe OU is going to make a move with the top 100 tight end, but it's hard to imagine the Iowa Hawkeyes tight end rep making this offer more than just OU checking the boxes because they like his film. I'd imagine he's going to go to Iowa, but you never know. Sometimes kids, if George Kittle can leave Oklahoma City, go to Iowa, can Iowa send us back a high school tight end and compensation, please? And then Miguel Chavis made an interesting offer to Kane Van Norden, who is 6'8", 250 pounds, I think at defensive end. He's from Pennsylvania. He's unranked. He seems to be more of a basketball prospect. The brief highlights on Huddle are intriguing. He's very raw, but the measurables are certainly there for him to become a big defensive end. He probably could be 275 at that size. That with his frame, he looks 6'7", 6'8". And then we have an athlete offer in Hawaii, Samson Toa Satele. He's 6'3", 205. He's a linebacker prospect. He's from Hawaii. Imagine OU will find a way to go visit him in person. Perhaps when they're visiting Talanoa Ely, if they make any progress in that recruiting in June and go back for an in-home, maybe they could go see Satele as well. He's ranked in the top 50 in the nation at linebacker overall. He's not a top 50 linebacker. He's a top 50 player regardless of position. By On3. And then we have one more offensive lineman in this binge of offers. Kyler Kuhn from North Dakota. He's 6'3", 6'4", 290 pounds. He's an offensive guard, and he is ranked top 50 in the nation by On3. He's been getting offers from other Big Ten powers as well. And then finally, we got two offers in 2028 to discuss to end this recruiting update. The first offer is to Dawson Jacobs. Remember, I was talking about David Jacobs before? Well, this is his younger brother. He's 6'3", 240, maybe 6'4", 240, defensive lineman, plays on the D-line with his brother. OU offered his, so you'd literally get probably 2 5-stars for one if the brothers decide to play together. OU offered, everybody else is going to offer. Again, barring some major connection I'm not seeing, it's going to be tough for OU to pull these kids out of Georgia. But I keep waiting for Todd Bates to win one of these, or Miguel Chavis combined to win one of these battles. Then the biggest offer for 2028, at least in terms of, well, this is fascinating, is OU offered a quarterback. They only have one quarterback offer for 2027 out right now to Peyton Houston. Now that Trey Taylor, who dropped OU way back, and Trey Taylor verbal to Nebraska today, which is kind of interesting. I think his ceiling's probably higher than what Nebraska's doing right now, but they did a good job recruiting him, so they need quarterbacks. He'll come in, and technically I'd probably sit behind Raiola for a year if that all works out the way they want it to. So, but back to OU recruiting. This isn't a Nebraska podcast. OU offered Graham Simpson, who is presumed Alabama starting quarterback Ty Simpson's younger brother. He's 6'1", like 170 right now. I mean, he's a high school freshman. He has time to grow and fill out. He had 59 touchdowns last year. That's right, 59. He had nearly a 76 completion passing rate. He passed for over 4,000 yards, had 57 passing touchdowns with 1 interception. I imagine he's going to get lots of offers, and maybe he'll follow his brother to Alabama. Maybe he won't. His brother was recruited by Nick Saban. So who knows? But he's OU's first 2028 offer. I think this is the earliest OU would have offered a rising high school sophomore. I'm trying to figure out if when Peyton Houston got his offer. I think he got that last summer. So this should be the earliest I think OU's ever made an offer to a rising high school sophomore quarterback. So we'll see what happens there. So we've got updates coming for the rest of May. There'll be action. I'll be talking about OU targets falling off the board, verbaling elsewhere. That's going to happen. Just get used to it. We'll talk about it. We should have a commit coming up. Maybe we'll see some other commit action occurring. It's hard to know. With OU's visit policy and prior practice the last couple of summers on focusing on official visits, then commits, and also commits occurring in July. So thanks for listening. Please make sure you subscribe to the podcast and don't forget to leave a rating. Also, if you're listening to this on YouTube, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. Finally, one last mention. Please visit patreon.com/Sooners360817 to subscribe for more recruiting content on Patreon. The Patreon site directly supports this podcast, keeps this podcast free. Thanks, everyone.